All right. I hit the space bar on my keyboard, and for what do you know, it stops recording.
So let's just pick it up from where we
I
left
just
off
did,
and slap
yeah.
them
So I'm
together.
going to pick it up right now. So,
Okay.
but with the with the attendance going down and them having to offer discounted seats again, I think it's beginning to show that this fan base is starting to realize that there's a rebuild going on, but there's nothing worth watching. As you said, there's no one right now to get this fan base excited. No Vlad Guerrero Jr. type young player that gives them some kind of hope. Right now, as I said, when your best player is Matthew Boyd, and as good as he's been, we're talking Matthew Boyd, a 28-year-old junk baller essentially. You're not going to sell tickets, and it's kind of a catch-22 for the Tigers. They're saying, well, we're not going to spend money till we're in a position to win, but there comes a point where you have to start spending money to get into that position to win. So,
Right.
and right now, this team is. I just don't see where they're going right now, and the fan base, I think, feels the same way going by the attendance, because the attendance is awful. And if you watch games on television, you see it looks awful, just vast swaths of empty seats at Comerica Park.
Yeah, there's just, they can't, there's nobody, and I know that, hey, I understand that that's part of the rebuild is you don't have the players
Right.
to compete. I understand that. But, the fans are speaking with their wallets right now,
Yeah.
and they just don't want, to pay that. I hear what you're saying about it's a cool experience and the whole, but it's a cool experience, but that's a one-off.
Yeah, and it's
That's
not
somebody.
worth buying season tickets for.
It's
That's
not
for
right.
sure.
It's not sustainable. That's a family that says, let's go to the ballpark. We've been able to scrape together $200 of discretionary income, and we're going to spend it on the ball game. We're going to pay $25 to park our car. We're going to pay $60 for the tickets at least.
Yeah.
We're going to spend it on maybe $40 on food and beverages. The kid wants a souvenir, so we're going to spend $25 on a souvenir before we leave, and then before we know it, we spent 200 grand. 200 grand. Seems like 200 grand.
Yeah.
$200 and watch the Tigers lose 7-1 on with 4 hits,
Yep.
and all 4 of them are singles, and nothing going on offensively.
It's
And
6 utility
12
pitchers.
strikeouts,
Yeah.
12 strikeouts, and everybody's hitting 200 or below.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just. I mean, the whole thing about it's a great experience. Only takes you so far.
Right.
Now I want to show you, Al. I want to talk about the 2013 Astros. Now the 2013 Astros finished the year 51 and 111. This
Yeah.
was the third straight year, I believe, that they lost 100
Yeah.
or more. As a matter of fact,
They were really bad for several
they
years.
lost. They lost in an increasingly more number of games.
Yeah.
I think they went from like 103 to 107 to 111 in terms of losses.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring them up is because the 2013 Astros did have Jose Altuve.
Yeah.
He was a starting second baseman. He had 283. They had they had Marwin Gonzalez on that team. They had
The
let's
building,
see.
essentially the building, some of the building blocks of the World Series team were.
They had
were showing
Dallas
up.
Keuchel was in the rotation. They had some of these players were already starting to come up. You go up to the 2014 team, which lost 92 games. They brought in Springer was
Yeah.
on that team.
Right.
Of course, Altuve, Gonzalez I mentioned. Then you had Keuchel. You had McHugh.
Yeah.
You had, so they were starting to build. They had some players there.
Yeah.
We're talking Altuve, a future MVP guy,
Mhm.
basically, who was on those lousy Astros teams.
Right.
So, if you look at at the top of the discussion, you said, look at the Tigers roster now,
Yeah.
and is there anybody on it? I'll even give you the 40-man roster.
Yeah.
Is there anybody on it that we think will be a key contributor to whenever they get good again?
Right.
And I don't see right now
Hmm.
the Jose Altuve of this group.
Right.
I don't see anybody who is you can point to. I mean, even Kristen. If you want to say Kristen Stewart, maybe I'll give you that. But I don't see Stewart as he may be on the team, but I don't think he's going to be a transcendent player.
Yeah, again, to use another '84 Tiger, he's like Larry Herndon, essentially. Yeah. You know, nice piece to have, but he's not critical. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. But it's I'll just say this pro tip: you want to go to a Tiger game sometime this year? Wait till late in the year. Go to StubHub. You'll be able to get really good seats for like $5-6. Tax it might be closer to 10. And then parking will cost. The last time I went to a Tiger game, that's exactly what I did. I went to StubHub. Tickets were going for $5-6. In the lower bowl, 10 rows back behind home plate. I picked up a couple seats with tax for $20. Parking, they were giving it away on StubHub. I was able to park in the nice new garage next to Comerica Park for $5, buying it from them, because people want to at least get something back on their season ticket investment. And that's how I was able to go to a Tiger game cheap. Right? It's still too early in the season to get those kind of deals. So,
right.
But yeah, if you're going to go late in the year when they bring up the guys from Toledo and Erie, and the weather will still be nice, and it'll be even cheaper to go if you want to get that experience. But right now, yeah, you nailed it. This is not season ticket. This is no time to be trying to sell season tickets. So it's crazy. All right. We need to talk. Now that we kind of got the Tigers, we're getting. This is a topic that includes the Tigers, not totally about the Tigers, and that is the tanking epidemic, Greg. This is, when I was doing the research on this, it's absolutely bonkers when you think about it. Right now in the American League, actually before, we're going back a week or two ago at least, even before that, the AL playoff teams are essentially set in place. They were set in place before Memorial Day. If you look at the Fangraphs, which is a great place to look for advanced type stats and all kinds of things, they have their page where it comes to playoff odds. Right now, according to Fangraphs, 9 American League teams are already out. They're essentially out of playoff contention with a chance of making the playoffs of less than 10%. Actually, you can make it 10 because right now the Indians, they are a long shot at 29%. There's 5 teams expected to make the postseason in the American League. The 3 division leaders, Astros, Twins, and Yankees, they all have more than 97% chance of making the playoffs. Then you get the 2 wild cards. You got the Rays, you got the Red Sox at 85 and 72% respectively. So, and of those teams, Greg, only the Twins can be really considered a surprise contender. They essentially flip places with Cleveland. So, of the teams in tank mode, when you think about it, just like we've been talking about the Tigers, and seeing like the struggles of the of Baltimore, some of these other teams, it's hard to see any of them, or Kansas, a team like Kansas City, it's hard to see any of them being competitive within the next couple of years. And as we've been saying, quite likely it might even be longer. So baseball's got a major conundrum on their hands. What's the solution when close to 2/3 of the American League thinks tanking is the only way to rebuild? And it makes for a hugely uncompetitive scene when you got essentially 5 teams jockeying for playoff position, and everybody else is waving white flags saying, check us up in about 2 years when we had a few drafts. And that's essentially what it is now. It's absolutely bonkers when you think about it. They think tanking's bad in the NBA. All you got to do is look at the American League right now.
Yeah, it is. It's a concern. There's no question about it. As you were talking, I was taking a peek at the standings. I look at them every few days, but I was looking at them again, and there's there's really nothing compelling going on there. The Astros, they're gone. I mean, they'll wrap their division up by 4th of July. The Twins, the way they're going, that doesn't look like that's going to be much of a race. I can't really. I don't necessarily trust them, but they've got such a big lead right now. It's hard to not trust them.
Right.
The Yankees, what can you say? I mean, they were just riddled with injuries, especially the first month or so of the season. And look where they are, 38-19. The Rays, which I don't trust them either. Although I got to tell you, this Kevin Cash, he flies under the radar. But I'm telling you, he's one of the better managers in baseball. Whoever, it's funny because he's following the footsteps of of Joe Madden, another
Yeah,
former Rays
right.
manager. But I tell you, this Cash, if I'm not sure what his contract situation is with Tampa,
Yeah.
but I would be shocked if Tampa was the last team that
Yeah,
he
a
works
team
for,
is willing to pay be willing to pay a lot more than Tampa will. That's for damn sure.
because he's been able to do with the Rays.
More with less, as they say.
Well, I can't I can't name three players on that team,
Yeah,
and they won I think 90 some odd games last year
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. Only one I can really name is Kevin Kiermaier. That's about it.
And I mean they don't even have Longoria anymore,
Yeah,
and they've traded. That was the other thing. They've traded. You talk about tanking. They tried to tank
yeah,
almost, and,
yeah,
and Cash wouldn't let them do it. I mean,
yeah.
they traded away everybody. Longoria, and over the last several years, Price, Longoria. There's others.
I think the
Archer.
last really big one was when they traded Chris Archer.
Yeah, Archer.
But then they just absolutely
They
stole
just
players from Pittsburgh for that.
they just seem to be able to just hang around all the time.
Yeah,
Every time you look at the standings, they're never buried. The Blue Jays and the Orioles. Forget them.
yeah.
And they've got way bigger, maybe not so much the Orioles, but the Blue Jays have bigger payroll. The Rays don't have anybody. They have
Yeah.
no household names whatsoever.
And no one's going to their games.
Nobody's going to their games. They're playing in a crappy ballpark
Yep.
with no fan support. It's amazing what
Yeah.
Cash has done. What a great hire by the Rays. And
Right.
I don't know what they're going to do to keep him around, but he's going to get snatched up by somebody. Somebody like the Mets, for example,
Yeah.
who've been looking for the Nationals, who've been looking for the right guy to lead
Yeah.
their team, should look at a guy like Cash.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how he would do the one thing you got to be concerned about with Kevin Cash is that he's never worked in a big time market. He's never,
Yeah.
it's one thing to work down in Tampa where nobody cares. When you put him under the bright lights of the
Right.
Mets or the Nationals or a team like that, that may be a different story. But I tell you, this guy is as far as I'm concerned, he's writing his ticket. He can go
Yeah.
wherever he wants because all he has to do is point to what he's done with, like you said, done a lot with very little. Now, getting back to your original point, yeah, there's nothing going on race-wise in the American League. You've got
Right.
the divisions are, as far as I'm concerned, they're done. Now
Yep.
you can say, well, hey, the Rays are through the three games of the Rays aren't catching the Yankees.
No.
Rays aren't going to catch the Yankees. For all I said about Kevin Cash, they're not catching the Yankees. The Red Sox are 9.5 back. They're 10 back in the loss column from the Yankees.
Mhm.
They haven't been able to really fire yet. The
But there's
Astros
no
are
one else in the
gone.
American League that's trying to compete. There really
Right.
isn't.
Well,
Maybe
here's
other
the
than Cleveland. That's it.
And the thing about that, Al, is that maybe in a way, this Astros Cubs, and I call it the Astros and Cubs model because
Right.
they were the two teams that were the most, I think, the highest profile in terms of tanking, if you will, bottoming out and then rising again.
Right.
That's great that they were able to do that, but not just because they were able to do it doesn't mean that every team that tries it can. You still have to have the scouting department. You still have to have the players. You still have to have the metrics, the analytics people.
And you have to have the luck.
You have to have the luck, and you have to have still have to have superstar players that you either trade for or you sign via free agency.
Right.
What did the Astros do 2 years ago?
Yeah.
They went out and traded for Verlander.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you have to do that too. You can't just say we're going to just do this within our own organization. You have to go outside. It's knowing when to go out and grab those pieces from other organizations that also is the key. So just because the Astros did it, and just because the Cubs did it, and just because the Twins are doing it, doesn't mean that everybody is
Yeah.
going to be able to do it. Now,
Yeah,
I understand.
the Yankees and Red Sox had a couple of bad seasons, but they didn't out and out tank, and they bounced back because of smart signings. They spent some money and made some smart trades.
Yeah,
You know?
it's
So, as we said on this podcast earlier in the year, this probably would have been a good year for someone to zig when the rest of the league is zagging. It would have been nice for the Tigers with all those, above average free agents out there. They could have signed on 1 or 2 year deals and maybe made a run, or and if it didn't work out, they might have been able to flip them, and Instead, Al Avila, grabs the Keystone combination from Pittsburgh, and they can't stay healthy. So, but yeah, that's what it's going to take, Greg, is I think to break this cycle of teams thinking, out and out tanking is the only way to rebuild. It's going to take a smart general manager and a smart manager to. There needs to be another Billy Bean to come along and with his Moneyball philosophy, some sort of different philosophy, and zig when the rest of the league is zagging. It's going to take someone like that because, as we both know, pro sports is a major. It's a copycat. They're copycat leagues. One thing can become successful, everybody decides to do it. So we need someone to become successful to not tank and win. Who is that going to be? I have no idea. Who's got the guts to try it? I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do know that between the Orioles, the White Sox, and the Royals last year, Al, those three teams combined lost 319 games. 319 games. So three teams in the American League, just in the American League, lost 319 games.
Yeah.
Now I know you can say, well, all throughout history, there's always been the haves and have-nots. That's true. But there were also teams.
There was usually a nice-sized middle class.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was usually a compelling pennant race for fans to be interested in.
Right.
It sometimes involved multiple teams, and now the National League. Fortunately, the good news is the National League's a little bit different right now. There's a lot more teams in the mix.
Yeah.
But there isn't. That's a little bit better in the National League. Although I still think the Dodgers are by far
they're the class of the league, yeah.
But that being said, there's a I think the Central Division in the National League is very competitive. I think the National League East is competitive, and you've got I think the Atlanta Braves are a good, young, exciting team to get behind.
And as you said, the Padres are overachieving. So
right.
And at least there's one league that has a bit of a middle class still trying to, I also you got to be thinking of politics with this wealth distribution stuff. It's essentially what we're talking about here. But it's going to be. If you're a baseball fan, this is stuff you don't want to see because we're seeing a lot of bad, unwatchable baseball. All right, Greg. Before we wrap this up, I know we wanted to finish pretty quickly here. I know we at least wanted to touch on this. We can get more in depth on this probably in our next podcast, but. What's your thoughts on Calvin Johnson of the probably Hall of Fame bound wide receiver who retired unexpectedly a couple of years ago, putting a price tag on his coming back into the fold as an ambassador of the Lions, of essentially saying, "Pay me back what I paid you of my signing bonus when I retired." And this is one of those topics I think that really divides the fan base because you got the people that say, "Oh, he didn't live up to his contract." And then you got the other side saying there's no loyalty in sports, period. And for all he did for the Lions, what's $1 million to $1 billion organization? So where do you fall on this topic?
This is something, Al, that it's really hard for me personally to find any sort of empathy or take any sort of side. You've got a corporation.
The old Pox and Bolster houses kind of thing.
Well, yeah, you've got a corporation in a terrible
$1 billion corporation.
The Detroit Lions, who have been a joke of an organization for our entire lifetime, and you've got a multi-millionaire, Calvin Johnson.
Yep.
So where am I supposed to find empathy for either of these?
The old billionaires argue with billionaires.
First of all, it doesn't really affect me.
No.
I mean, it doesn't really affect me. I mean, I can have an opinion, of course, on things that don't affect me. I have it all the time, but. This particular case, neither of them are likable to me.
Right.
I don't land squarely on Calvin's side. I don't land squarely on the Lions side. Depending on what day I wake up, I might take the Lions position. I might take Calvin's position, but there's nothing to me that's clear cut that says he's right or he's wrong. They're right, they're wrong, because at the end of the day, it's these rich people fighting over petty. In their terms,
in their world,
petty amounts of money.
Yeah.
You can, if this was a subject in a high school debate class, this would be a great subject for a debate team. You could say, okay, Team A, I want you to argue for on the Calvin Johnson side. Team B, I want you to argue on the Detroit Lions side, and that's your assignment. You've got a week to come up with your case, and then at the end of the week, present it to the class. And you could probably have both sides come up with some pretty compelling reasons why you should side with the Lions or why you should side with Calvin Johnson. But to me, Al, there's no emotion. I don't have any sort of allegiance to either of them. I don't really care. I don't. I mean, I know.
I understand where you're coming from.
The Lions say, "Well,
I just wish more fans kind of took that in stride, because there are so many fans, especially of the Lions franchise out there, who are just so blindly loyal to this franchise that they don't see." As you say, in this case, there's tons of shades of gray. There's right and wrong on both sides. And this is not a black and white kind of discussion, but that's essentially how this world has become, where it's either the Lions are all on the right and Calvin Johnson's wrong, or vice versa, when really there's lots of blame to go around on both sides. And you can say they're both at fault. They should both get together and come to some sort of compromise. But I don't see that happening.
Well, here's the other thing, Al. The other thing is that Rod Wood, who's the president of the Lions, was quoted the other day as saying, "Well, we'd like to have Calvin Johnson part of the family again. We'd like to have a relationship with him again."
Much like they do with Barry Sanders now, even though it was pretty icy for a while.
But what does that even mean? We want to have a relationship. We want to have him back in the family. First of all, the Lions they've done nothing on the football field in the last 62 years for anybody to want to have a relationship with him. Number one. Yeah. Number two, what does that mean? I mean, if you're going to use Barry Sanders, I wrote a piece about this. I blasted the Lions for making Barry this symbolic, almost like a greeter at a casino. They've turned him into
kind of like Joe Louis in Las Vegas kind of thing.
Right. They took arguably the greatest player in franchise history and turned him into a glad-hander.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be that's his job. It's almost like that Gordie Howe thing with the Red Wings when Gordie retired back in '71. They gave him that baloney job. That's what they did with Bear. That's their idea of back in the family and having a relationship with him. That's not a relationship. That's demeaning as far as I'm concerned. So if they're and Rod Wood is using Barry, he invoked that. He said we'd like to have a relationship with Calvin similar to what we've done with Barry.
Right.
Well, first of all, I would say similar to what you've done to Barry. Number one. Number two. Why would Calvin Johnson want that? What's in it for Calvin to be this glad hander for the Lions, to be some sort of an ambassador? What does that even mean? They send him out to these events to wear a Lions blazer and to shake hands. I mean, the whole thing is beneath these players. Number one, the whole thing is they don't give them real jobs in the front office. At least with Charlie Sanders and at least with Sheldon White, they gave them some.
You could look at the Detroit Tigers front office, where they have ex-players that seem to have legit. They at least take the advice of guys like Al Kaline, Willie Horton, Kirk Gibson's now in the front office, and especially Alan Trammell. They're at least they're used in spring training. They're used in scouting, things like that.
Oh, they're in on player personnel decisions.
Exactly.
They talk about possible trades.
Yeah.
They talk about who they're going to draft. Red Wings have done the same thing. They've got all those ex-Red Wings are in the front office.
There is so much knowledge there.
The Lions, with the exception, like I said, with the exception of Charlie Sanders, who for a while was a coach, then he was a broadcaster, then he was in the front office. Sheldon White was in the front office, but Sheldon White wasn't a star with the Lions. He was a good player. He wasn't a star. The Lions have not brought former Lions into the fold and made them tangible parts of the organization, where they're actually making decisions. They're in the war room. They're talking. They hardly ever have any former Lions that are even assistant coaches.
Right.
If you look at the assistant coaches over the years for the Lions, there's been really no one who's even had a relationship with the organization in any way, shape, or fashion. They don't have anybody in the front office who's of any sort of does any sort of tangible thing as a former Lion player. They have no loyalty to the players in that regard. And I'm not saying give them some job that's only titular. I'm talking about using these former players, and they've had a lot of good players come through that they could have used, is whether it's be an assistant coach or somebody in the personnel department or somebody to help the general manager, somebody who's been around the league as a player. I can't give you names off the top of my head, but
the first one that comes to my mind was someone like Lomas Glover, for example. A guy like that.
You mean Kevin Glover?
Yeah, or Lomas Brown.
Lomas Brown. Well, Lomas is a broadcaster.
Yeah, they're kind of joined at the hip, but guys like that, that's who I'm kind of thinking of. But that's the Lions for you.
Spielman.
Yeah, Chris Spielman.
Why didn't they reach out? I mean, I know they use Spielman as a preseason broadcaster or whatever. Right. And he's on the website with Michael Hara during the year. But you don't think they could have used Chris Spielman's knowledge in the front office or on the sidelines or something to do?
Some sort of advisory role.
My God,
yeah, it makes sense.
This is one of the greatest Lions defenders of all time, and they can't. Okay, so he finished his career with Buffalo. So what? Yeah. They can't bring him back. And give him some sort of in fairness, I don't know that that's something that Spielman wanted to do. I know that he applied to be the head coach of Iowa State.
But the only way to find out is to ask.
Right, and they don't. It drives me nuts that they just don't do that. They do not have a history, Al, of taking their former players and utilizing them for anything more than, and they say it just drives me nuts. Yeah. It's just reflective of how on the surface they seem to be these nice people. Everybody around the league, the Ford family is this, the Ford family is that. But when you look at them, when you look at the organization, they don't ever bring former players. Now they may occasionally bring them back to honor other players, but they don't ever they don't hire them.
Yeah.
They don't hire former Lions to do anything in that organization, and it's insane.
Yeah. I would just add one thing. Just when you say, they come off as nice and things like that. People who have that kind of wealth, we're talking about pro sports owners, you don't get that wealthy being a nice person. I'll believe that to my deathbed. You don't become a billionaire. You don't have that kind of cash unless you're willing to bend rules, you're willing to hurt people, and you're willing to make questionable, morally questionable choices. I mean, look at the Elliches. For example, look at the controversy of Detroit now with a lot of the broken promises that they promised pie in the sky and all they built is an arena and parking lots.
Right.
So that's my thought on it. I'll just say this: I'm with you there. There's if Calvin Johnson has anybody to be upset with, it's to be upset with his union with that crappy CBA that they signed that allowed stuff like that to happen to him. I'm going to be they gave him that money; he should be able to keep it. But unfortunately, your weak-ass union agreed to a deal that allowed billionaire owners to take back chump change from their players. So, I think the Lions were petty for doing it. I also think Calvin Johnson's anger is somewhat misplaced. But, there's a lot of gray in this topic, and I'm sure we'll touch back on it because I have a feeling this is one of those things that every 6 months it seams to pop up in the news. Someone says something new about it. So, all right, to wrap this show up, Greg, who is your jerk of the week?
I don't know if you know about this kid that plays for the Reds. Dietrich, this kid Dietrich, who's Derek Dietrich, who's got 17 home runs in just 123 at bats. Yeah. He's basically a guy he's 29 years old. He hasn't really done a whole lot in the big leagues. I don't know where this sudden power is coming from. If you look at his history, he's got some power, but not to this degree. Last year he hit 16 home runs and 500 at bats, 13 home runs and 400 at bats the year before that. He's never been a power, what you would call a slugger. This year he's got 17 home runs and 123 bats. Okay, that's all well and good, but I don't know if you've been watching this kid. He's turned into this diva all of a sudden. He hits home runs and he stands there at the plate. He admires them. He makes these cocky type gestures like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. He trots around the bases with a little bit of a cocky demeanor. He showboats, and people are starting to get annoyed with him. I mean, this is somebody he's done nothing to earn this kind of behavior. And I wouldn't even Bryce Harper and those kind of guys do this kind of stuff, but he especially
Yeah.
does not have any place behaving this way. Then he took a curtain call. He was like he was Roger Maris the other day. He's waving his batting helmet and he's bowing to the crowd like he's Reggie Jackson. This guy, he's done nothing. He plays on a crappy team. The Reds are awful. I mean, they're a little bit better than they were in the past. But who is this guy? Derek Dietrich. Who is he? And all of a sudden now he's acting like he's the second coming of Babe Ruth. So I'm annoyed with these kind of players who just all of a sudden decide that they're the greatest things in sliced bread, and they're all of a sudden they are, the second coming, and it's annoying. The bat flipping, whatever, but this standing at the plate and watching these balls like he's in a home run derby. He waits until the ball clears the fence before he starts his home run trot, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I'll say that's probably going to burn him one of these days. But you threw a curveball in that one because I thought you were going to go for the Pirates announcer who ragged on him and said Dietrich's grandfather was spinning in his grave over his antics.
John Wiener,
because this guy has been destroying the Pirates. He's put it up like a career season against the Pirates alone. So he's a little curveball. I thought you were going to go for that guy, but my jerk of the week, I'm going to go with essentially the playoffs in general, but the NBA in particular. If you look at the NBA final schedule, actually, Game 2 of the NBA Finals is undergoing right now as we're talking, as we're recording. If you look at the NBA schedule, it's going to take almost 3 full weeks to play the NBA Finals if it goes 7 games. It's Game 1, I think, was May 30th. Game 7 would be, I think, June 18th, 19th, around 19th. That's almost 3 freaking weeks to play 7 games. No, and the NHL isn't much better. They're playing their 7-game series is going to take about 17 days to play. No, it's ridiculous. Think about it. You get playoffs are a rhythm. You play every other day.
Right.
And let's not even forget about the NBA didn't have a playoff game for 9 days.
Right.
Because of how the conference finals went down.
Right.
I find it hard to believe that things are so stuck in stone, that they're so intertwined with TV that they essentially go dark for 9 days, and then they barely play for 3 weeks to get 7 games in. It's absolutely ridiculous. And as a fan, it's annoying as hell to expect, okay, when's the next playoff game? Well, they played Sunday, so that means at the least they would play Tuesday. No, they might not play till Thursday. That's essentially what it's become. So it feels like the playoffs in general in the NBA have been going on for like 6 months now. So my jerk of the week is just playoff scheduling, because it should not take 3 weeks to play 7 freaking games. That's just absolutely asinine. And I know it's not going to change because of TV money, and that's how they want it. And they want to put these games on at the most appropriate time to get the best ratings, because there's nothing else on in summer. But good Lord, it's stupid. I cannot stand it. Play the game every other day, and if you need to add an extra day for travel, so be it. But that's how games should be played. At the very least, I think baseball gets it right. Every other day, there may be an extra day for travel. But just don't get me started on start times either with these nights. Sometimes these games aren't. I'm just starting to rant. So that's my jerk of the week. The NBA for their asinine scheduling.
Well, that's a league too, Al. That they're not above. They've in the first, maybe not so much in the latter rounds, but certainly I know in the first round they've played Game 1 like on a Monday and Game 2 on Friday. I know that's crazy. I know that's happened. Yes. So good call there. Why don't you, real quick before we wrap it up, tell folks how they can tune in the podcast.
Yes, where you can listen to us. Of course, you watch our video of us two chatting on YouTube. Unfortunately, this video will probably split in half because I hit the wrong damn button because I got all animated with the keyboard. But yeah, go to YouTube, search the Dietrichs, Eno and Big Al. Please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you like what you see. There's also a little bell thing that you can hit. That way you click on that and you get notified whenever a new video goes up. So in other words, a new video will go up every other Monday, but whatever. We're also available, as always, on iTunes. Just search the Dietrichs, Eno and Big Al. We're on Stitcher Radio, which is available on pretty much every platform out there. There's an app for iOS. There's an app for Android. There's you use it in your computer browser. Again, just search, go to Stitcher.com, search the Knee Jerks. Of course, you can find it on the app stores. I'm also working, it looks like we're going to be on places like radio.com. We're going to be on trying to get us into Spotify, a few of these other ones. Our host has a really easy way to get us to apply for these things. I've done it with all these different places. The only one I'm having trouble with is Google Play for some reason. I'll see if I can get us in on that as well. But it's getting to the point where if you want to listen to this podcast, we're going to be on whatever big podcast host will have us, because I'm trying to get them on us all. But the main three, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, search the Knee Jerks, we are there. All right, and of course, Greg will tell you where to find us on social media and any other thank yous and anything you need to know. Here's Greg.
Well, follow us on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Follow me on Twitter at Greg. Follow the Knee Jerks on Facebook, facebook.com/the Knee Jerks, and that's where you can get updates and read, get links to my columns, which are pretty much every week on WordPress. Out of Bounds is my all sports blog except for hockey, where I have a special blog, The Winged Wheeler, so you can check me out there. I want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up for this stuff now for the 11th season as we start season 11, and you, Big Al, for making Sunday nights so gosh darn fun.
Yeah, back when we started, I didn't have much gray hair in my beard. That's for goddamn sure. All right. As always, thank you, Greg, for taking time out of your busy weekend to talk sports with me. Shout out to Linda, who is working in the ER tonight, saving lives. Yay! We're gonna hang in there. We'll be up north again before you know it. And I want to give a shout out to Bean for being quiet during this podcast. So. That is, for those wondering, that is Greg's dog. So with that, I think that about covers it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll have a lot to talk about. We'll have I think the NBA draft will have gone by that time. We'll have maybe not the NBA draft, but we will have the MLB draft to talk about. We'll have something to discuss. I would not be surprised if we delve further into the Calvin Johnson situation, because there's a lot to cover there. So, but until that time, when we have lots to talk about, we will see you then. So until that time, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.